Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of PodSaveChocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host, and I'm also the creator and moderator of thechocolatelife.com. Today, it's one of my special treats. One of my favorite things to do is not only interview makers, but also have an opportunity to taste their work at the same time. And today, I'm going to be joined by Chef Andrea Young, who is the founder, chief chocolate maker, chief creative officer, and all the E's that are part of the C, chief everything officer in a small company. And we're going to be talking about her business, Sweet Vegan Chocolates. And Chef, good morning and welcome to Pod Save Chocolate. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for this invitation.
No, it's my pleasure. I think the thing that, I look at some of the materials that you send me and, realize that you've been in business in New York since 2016, and I lived in New York up in Westchester. So I lived in Larchmont for a bunch of years. And then for the last 2 years, I was in New York. I was living down in Brooklyn and I'd never heard of you before. And so it's sort of like with a whole lot of chagrin that I've, moved all the way across the country. And then here we are, having an opportunity to meet for the first time. But I'm
Exactly.
glad that we've had the opportunity to do. So before we jump into the interview portion of today, what I want to do is remind everybody who's watching, you can go into the comments, whether you're in the live chat on YouTube or whether you're in the comments in LinkedIn or Facebook, and you can ask Chef Young a question, right? Or comment on anything that you see here. So please go and do that. And you can also just give us a quick shout out about where in the world you're connecting from, not YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, but geographically where you're connected. So we'll get that shout up on screen and we can share that as well. And so with all that, and Chef Young, Andrea,
Yes.
however you'd like to be referred to. So one of the questions that I always get asked is, how did you get into the chocolate business? And so I'm looking at your history and I see that you decided to go to cooking school in 2008. What were you doing in your pre-chocolate life? And what happened for you to become interested in moving into chocolate?
Well, my pre-chocolate life really started with just growing up in the Midwest and always being exposed to lots of food through my maternal grandmother, Georgia May. Coming from a large family, we did a lot of cooking together, and I was the chief cook and bottle washer with my grandma's, guidance and inspiration. And then that sort of always followed me, that's something I enjoy doing. But it really wasn't until I was in New York and my mom had come to visit and had a little fall and needed to be hospitalized. And while she was recuperating in my small little New York City apartment, you know how those can be.
I lived in several of them, yes.
Absolutely. I brought in a young woman who was a chef herself to kind of give us some guidance, and that was Chef Christine Waltermeyer. And so she would cook with us, and I was the assistant, the little sous chef, slicing and dicing. And my mom was the official taste tester with the three of us. So, with that sort of guidance and inspiration, and learning all about the vegan world and the health and nutrition that good plant based food can offer, I really started to revamp my own diet. My mom got amazingly healthy in only a few months. And I ended up going into this school, the Natural Kitchen Cooking School, and it was just being started by Chef Christine Waltermeyer. And I really gained a lot, never thinking, honestly, Clay, that I would do anything with, food or chocolate. And that was even before I got into the chocolate world. And I started getting some job opportunities as an assistant chef or a chef for people in their personal lives, particularly celebrities on the Upper West Side. And I would come in and work with them for a couple of days on my days off from architecture. And I
Oh,
really
cool.
loved it. I loved it.
So you're trained as an architect. So you're trained in the
Yes.
fine arts. Where did you go study?
I studied at Parsons School of Design and Interior Architecture, and I worked for many, many years for a particular high-end residential firm, and we did fabulous projects all over the world. So that was really my base, the creative side.
Gotcha. And so that may explain some of the ways you approach making your chocolate. I don't know if you knew this, but I'm also spent a lot of my time in New York on the Upper West Side. So I used to live on 74th between Broadway and West End. I mean, for a
Wow.
long time. It's just a lovely. And so there's a good chance that at some point we were neighbors, which is just always really, really, a fun part of being in New York City. I mean, no matter how big it is, it ends up just collapsing down into being very, very small neighborhoods. Now, before we go and into the next thing, I wanted to point out that for people who are interested in, this is the homepage of the Natural Kitchen Cooking School, which is Natural Kitchen Cookie School, which is where you went. I haven't put a link to that in today's post, but I will afterwards. And I do want to point out for everybody who is not a regular watcher here, is that I do put together a post for every episode of Pod Save Chocolate. So this is the homepage of the Chocolate Life right now. You'll see the episode right here. If you go to the page, you can find out that there's links to resources, including to the homepage of Sweet Vegan Chocolate, and so you can learn more about what it is that's going on. And I'll be referring back to this page over the course of the episode, just so everybody has that sensibility. So, Chef, so everybody, I do have a box of chocolate, and I promise we will get to the tasting portion of this very, very shortly. But when I think about the sort of like the modern trends in chocolate making, when I think about very highly decorated, so bright, shiny, sort of airbrushed, maybe hand painted, shell molded pieces. And so shell molding is one of three different styles of chocolate making. We've got hand rolling and then dipping. We've got shell molding. And then we have slabbed ganaches, which either enrobed or hand dipped. And I noticed that everything that you sent me in the box today was a slabbed, hand dipped piece. So number one is, where did that decision happen? Because when I think about, what the trend is, it's all about, brightly colored shells.
Well, I personally don't believe in brightly colored shells. I like things that are more natural. I like things that are very beautiful, but just very clean and inviting. So for me, it's all about what's on the inside of the chocolate that counts. But so many people eat with their eyes first. So I wanted to create something, and this is just a recent addition, to sort of decorate the tops. Coming from a background of architecture and design and decorating, I always like to have things very streamlined. So that's how I approached my chocolates. But I do like my little designs, and I do think that they add a clarity. So when you're looking for a particular flavor, you know exactly where to go to get that energizing espresso.
Right. So there is the question of identification, but everybody can see that if you open up the box, what's the best way to do this? Actually, it's probably, let me locate my cursor. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Oh, that's interesting. I can't find my cursor today. There we go. That if we were to go and look at this image, you'll see that everything is just a very simple dip, and things are just decorated with chocolate. So either as drops, or is that a fork, or are you also dripping and then dragging a decorating tool through it?
I use a little paintbrush.
Okay. All right. So a lot of hand work that's associated, and I do have a box, and so let's go, and now that I know where my cursor is. All right. So here's the box. Right. And what you sent me was a combination of your regular standard collection. So there are 4 pieces here: espresso, lemon, midnight passion, and spicy ginger, and then 4 members of your seasonal collection: blackberry jam, raspberry royale, strawberry, and champagne. And we're running into spring, so red fruit, or fruits in general, obviously make a whole lot of sense. Berries make a whole lot of sense for a spring. So when I think about flavors inside of chocolates like the one you make, right? Mm-hmm. I think the classic French is, it's really all about the chocolate, and then the flavor is there just in a sort of fleeting hint for you to get at that flavor. But when you get done, chocolate is what you're left with. And I think of that as the classic French style of this kind of chocolate making. La Maison de Chocolat is, perhaps the one example that many people may know. I mean, the Belgian style of chocolate making, it's really more about the shapes. So we think about seashells, for example. And the filling, whatever the filling is, it's just going to be, if it says lemon, it's going to be noticeably lemon, right? As opposed to the American style, which tends to be, if it's lemon, it's going to beat you over the head as lemon or raspberry or peppermint or wherever it is. So in the context of those three styles, where would you place the work you do in terms of your approach to flavor in the pieces?
I would say it's a little more intense in the French, but
Okay.
not knock in your face the American style. And definitely something that leaves you with a brightness after you've tasted it, and also a sense of satisfaction in the flavor profile.
So I'm not hunting. I mean, often, I'm tasting things that are done in the French style, and I put it in my mouth and I go, well, I know that it says flavor X right on the description, and I'm going, wow, if I didn't know that in advance, I'd be really hard pressed to be able to pick it out of what's going on. But if you're doing something in peppermint, it's not going to be bright as a peppermint patty, for example, right?
Exactly.
If I'm doing coconut, it's not going to be the coconut in a I'm going to say a Mounds bar, right, which is a particular kind of way, right? I think that's really important because for me, isolating these different styles was a part of my personal evolution. As I started thinking about how I'm going to become a critic, I was thinking I think it's not fair to be able to compare a French style um, enrobe bonbon, a slabbed ganache bonbon, a French style, and an American style. I mean, they're very, very different, and they require different approaches to evaluating them. Right. So I wanted to establish to the people here where they fit, so that if they do want to go and reach out and purchase them, and the products are available online, and you can go to the website, which is in the post for today, and you can click and you can order boxes. I wanted to establish, where these things fit in the universe of tastes. Right?
Well, I think the word is balance,
Okay.
and that's what I enjoy in all aspects of life. So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully my chocolates are a reflection of that as well. And you're going to be letting us know very soon, I hope.
We will figure it out. I mean, and I want to let you know that I was fortunate to have had an opportunity to take a class one afternoon at the La Maison du Chocolat boutique on the Upper East Side, so Madison in the 70s, if I recall correctly. It may still be there, in which Robert Lanx was the instructor, right? And the first thing he said out of his mouth was the word équilibre, so balance, equilibrium. So I certainly appreciate that. So let's talk about that and the chocolate that you use. I mean, so again, many people, when they go to school, the school uses a particular kind of chocolate. So when you get done, all your recipes are gauged to a particular chocolate, and so you tend to use that chocolate when you leave school. Um, but we had a conversation last week, if I recall, about getting this together, and that's not the approach that you've taken. So when we think about, and if you don't want to reveal whose chocolate you're using, don't feel like you have to do that. But with the approach to the chocolate, how did you choose the particular chocolates that you're using today, and is there a difference between what's on the outside and what's on the inside?
Great questions. There really isn't a difference between the outside or the inside. It's a blend of three different chocolates. And over time, I've had an experience where I've tried many different types of chocolates, um, some single sourced, some, different, more factory oriented chocolates. And I've really come together with what I think is a nice balance for what we do on the inside. And of course, the inside, we add our own flavor to make each chocolate a special taste experience. And then the outside is just the pure chocolate without any added flavoring. So you get the hard shell, of course, and then you get the creamy inside, which will be the mouth watering experience. So I like having a blend of things. I like to have a balance in the experience where you're going to get two different taste experiences when you try a sweet vegan chocolate.
And how long did it take you to come up with that specific blend of three different chocolates? I'm a huge advocate of blending, by the way,
Oh,
right?
nice.
No, I'm a huge advocate. As a matter of fact, if anybody is watching this who'd been to any of the classes that I gave at the Jean-Marie Auboin workshop in Las Vegas with FBM, they know that one of my mantras is blending is your friend. right? Blending is your friend, blending is your friend. And so I think that there's a tendency for people to say, well, this is the chocolate that the manufacturer provides to us. That's what we have. That's what we can work with. And yet you can say, well, this 65 may be a little sweet, so I can throw in maybe a little liquor, or maybe I want a little bit of creaminess, so I'm going to adjust with a different fluidity. So how long did it take you to actually come up with the three that you're using today?
I would say about 3 years. I mean, I really gave it a lot of earnest consideration, a lot of taste testing, and a lot of people reviewed things for me. And I, kept statistics on things of what things I thought worked better than other things. So uh, I would say it was an ongoing process for quite some time. But I am happy now with what we have. And I think, I will, I'm very committed when I like something, I'll stick with it. So I think we're onto something good, and our reviews reflect that. So I think that the time was well spent. And I believe in the long path of something. If it takes time to develop and come up with something, I'll do it. But I also can pivot quickly too, as being a small company. So that's a good thing too.
There are supply chain concerns. All of a sudden, oh my gosh, they're not making this anymore. What am I going to do? Or it's like, oh, the ship with the container on it got stuck in the Suez Canal. What am I going to do in order to be able to be able to produce product for my customers? So let's also step back. So you have this experience. Where you were inspired to go to cooking school, and particularly a vegan cooking school from Chef Walter Meyer. And you come out and you open up this chocolate business. Now, it sounds like through your work as a residential interior designer in New York City, you did have connections with probably some what we would think of as high net worth individuals, celebrities, right?
Mhm.
So you do have, and so it's an interesting way of segueing from one career into another career. Is to be able to take advantage of it. But you decided, you may have been living in the Upper West Side. Were you living in Harlem? So above 125th Street at the time. So were you living in Harlem? Why is the business in Harlem? And how did being in that part of New York City in 2016, things are, on the up. It's gentrifying, right? So what was the decision about why Harlem and the Harlem community, and deciding to reach out to the community as a part of the mission for what you're doing?
Well, one little step back, I did, after the architecture, work part time being a chef with the celebrities. That gave me the exposure, which was really a gift. I also knew I didn't want to be a full-time chef. So I knew at that point, developing the flavors for the chocolate was really an opportunity for me to go into chocolate. And then that's really what I started to develop, is just the chocolate world for myself, because so many people were looking for things that didn't have gluten or were soy free or nut free. So that's really where I began to focus, not just vegan, but anything that could be a potential allergen. And I think I selected Harlem because A, it's very close. I live up in Morningside Heights, but it's really right next door, 121st in Amsterdam. And that's where we have our offices established. And then I was able to find a community kitchen, which I work out of presently. And that's in East Harlem at 115th Street and Park Avenue. So I think all those things began to fall together, as well as the fact that small business development centers were situated all over the Eastern Seaboard. And there's one really great one, SBDC, at Columbia University. So I started taking business school classes in 2017. And that enabled me really to get more of a foundation into running a business, not just making the chocolate. So it really took a couple of years to get all of those things under my belt and get myself really established.
So I'm thinking of, again, as a longtime New Yorker, I have spent a lot of time at the Metro North station at 125th and Park, and so I'm really, really quite familiar with the neighborhood that you're talking about at 115th. And actually, sometime in my career, I may have been in that kitchen, or know other people who have worked out of that kitchen as well. Um, and so, but I do want to talk. So there are resources often. So we have things like SCORE, the Service Corps of Retired Executives. right? Which is all over the place, all over the country when I say it. But there is something I think that is fairly unusual about New York City and its Small Business Development Council and the resources that they offer. And I think that the really good lesson that people can learn from this who are watching what you've done over the course of the last now, 8 years or so, is to, number one, recognize what you like to do, and then recognize what you are good at, right? And then where you can, improve your own personal experience, understanding, and capabilities in the areas, but then say, I need to give this to someone else, right? Because, really the business energy is best focused somewhere else. My energy in the business is best focused somewhere else, but I need to have oversight over everything. So I need to be aware of these things. What part of all of this is your favorite? I mean, so, for example, one of the things I know about myself, and I'm talking a lot here, is that once I master something, I want to be on to the next thing, right? And so for me, being in production, every single thing needs to be a perfect work of art, and I'm making 1,000 of them today, and I made 1,000 of them yesterday, and I'm gonna make 1,000 of them tomorrow. I pull out what's left of the hair on my head if I were to go do that. It's like once I master something, I'm on. And I have utmost respect for people who are in production every day. For me, as far as I'm concerned, they're the experts. But what is it? Where do you fall down on? Well, not fall down. Where are you in this sort of spectrum of things? What is it that really motivates you in the morning when you get up? What are the things that you're not so happy about? What? Yeah.
Well, great question. I would say what motivates me every single day is my customers. I absolutely adore them. I love when they write reviews and they share from their heart. I love when someone's never been able to enjoy a chocolate before because they couldn't have something that had soy in it and dairy, and they had a nut issue, and they have actually been able to share them with their children and their family. I love when I can develop a new flavor of chocolate, like I did for Jessica Chastain when I developed my champagne truffle. And I love making people happy with chocolate. It brings so much joy to me.
I am a huge fan of that last point, because if you've watched some of my episodes, and you probably have, that I end with, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. So, seeing that obvious connection in your attitude and your approach and what it is that I do is a lot of fun. I want to do a quick reset before we get into the tasting component of this, which is to remind everybody you're watching PodSaveChocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host. Today's guest is Chef Andrea Young. You can go to thechocolatelife.com. Here's the post for today's episode. Here's the homepage of The Chocolate Life right here. And every episode of Pod Save Chocolate is sponsored by the members of The Chocolate Life. If you're not a member, go click on the join button, which is green. Mine says account because I'm logged in, but it'll say join. Please do that. If you're watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and help support what it is that we're doing. And go into the comments. If you have a question for Chef Andrea, you can put it in the comments. I'll get it up on the screen, and I will ask it of her. So I have in my box here, everybody, It arrived yesterday. I opened it up just to make sure that everything arrived in good condition. And I've got a box, which is some of the seasonal pieces and some of the standard collection. And I got to say, number one is, I've got the box open, and I'm going to put my nose in it. And one of the things that I have said, listen, if you open up a box and your first impression is vanilla, then chances are that somebody's using a lot of cheap vanilla, right, to hide things. And then the number one impression that I get from opening up the box is just sort of this deep, rich, sort of complex chocolate aroma, right? And I think this is where the fact that you're using 3 different chocolates and blending them is a contribution, or contributes really well to that. And so, as I move sort of around the box, there are some slight nuance changes, in the aromas, which is really, really interesting for me. I like sort of the classic, simple, not heavily decorated stuff that seems to be in vogue today, and the more classic things. But what I want to do is I want to start off with the champagne truffle. Number one, because like I'm a fan of redheads, and Jessica Chastain is a redhead. And so did she come to you and say, "Hey, I want a special piece for a special occasion," or how did the champagne truffle come about?
Oh, this is a cute story. A customer called me out of the blue, and she said, I have been searching for the last 3 days to find vegan champagne truffles, and no one seems to have them in New York City. Would you be able to possibly be able to make something? And I said, without missing a beat, I said, absolutely. And she said, it's for someone very important. It's for an opening night. And, I really can't tell the name, but, it's got to be done on a certain date. And I said, well, that's fine. Can you give me more information for delivery? And of course, by that, I was putting the pieces together. And then she finally said, it's for Jessica Chastain. And this woman had flown in from Hawaii, and she was very excited about discovering Sweet Vegan. We did create these champagne truffles. I made some extra truffles for her to try as well, because I wanted her to be able to have that taste experience before Jessica did. And I guess that's her favorite flavor. So we delivered them to the Hudson Theater for the opening night. And I think that was a big hit with Jessica, from what I understand. And of course, my client was thrilled that we could make that happen, and that we did that all within about less than a week. So, and now
No
we're
pressure.
adding them into our collection as well. Yes, of course.
No
But
pressure.
that's what we can do for people.
Right. So when I think, yeah, so, I just want to say that, part of the aspect of that story that really appeals to me is, have you ever been up to Arthur Avenue in the Bronx?
Yes, I have.
Right. So I was shopping there for the better part of 15 years on a regular basis. And, I had my favorite butcher. His name was Sal Biancardi, right? And I had Frank was my fish guy at Randazzo's. And if I wanted to get a sandwich, I go to speak to Gianluca and Rosa at Tino's. And, Gil was where I went to get, my cheese and things like that. And I remember having a really, really fun experience with Keys, right? So Keeling Tong at Keys in New York City a long time ago. I was in the shop, and somebody walked in and said, are the raspberries ready, right? And Key said, no, I put the bottoms on them. Come back in an hour. And so there's this sense in which I think you want the relationship with your chocolatier to be the relationship your grandmother had or grandfather had with their butcher, right?
Mm.
Where you can just walk in and say, what's good today? Right. And having worked with you for many, many years, they'll go, this is what you want today, because this is what I got in. And I was fortunate enough to be able to have those experiences, not only with my butcher and my fish guy, right, and the place where I got cheese and stuff like that, but also with some chocolatiers that I know of. And so I love the idea that somebody can ring up or walk in and engage with you at some level, and in the creative process something happens, right, very, very quickly. And I think that's one of the things that having that relationship with a local chocolatier enables you to do that you'd never be able to do with a big company. And so one of the reasons why I like to support smaller makers is because of these kinds of opportunities. But when I think about champagne truffles and I think about New York City, one brand comes to mind in Rockefeller Center, Swiss with a T. And one of the things I don't like about them is they put crystal sugar on the outside. And I'm going, why do I want to go all the way to have this sort of sublime, texture of this, ganache, and then put crystallized sugar on the outside? That makes no sense to me. But are you using a champagne reduction, sort of like a mark to champagne, or
Yeah.
you take? Okay. So, in case anybody wants to know how this is one way to do it, that happens. And obviously, if you're using champagne, you're using a French champagne, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. And I got to say, I am beside myself in the sense that I didn't actually give myself a cutting board and a knife to cut these things. So I'm going to be really, really, really gauche, maybe the word I'm looking for, and actually bite them. So I could say, you know, these are hand dipped. Obviously, if I'm looking at the way the feet are and the way the bottom is, these are obvious that these are handmade. These are not hand dipped. These are not enrobed. I mean, the well, I'm really intrigued with the champagne because the reduction here is incredibly fruity. Um, and fruity in a way that I'm not necessarily used to tasting champagne in truffles. Um, but you know, in describing your approach to flavor, I think that this champagne piece is exactly that, which is, you know, when I take this and put it in my mouth, the first impression is the chocolate on my nose.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it is that I'm doing. When I bite it, my tongue hits the ganache and it starts melting right away. And the aromatics of the champagne just, and then there's this dance back and forth between the champagne and the chocolate, the champagne and the chocolate, the fruitiness of the champagne, right, and the darkness of the chocolate. This may or may not be something that people like, right? What they want is they want a very, very straightforward presentation of flavor, and the fact that it got something beating back and forth might going, this is weird. I don't know if I like this or not. I happen to like that sort of complexity and the change of flavor over time. And again, it's just, when it comes to the champagne-ness of it, right? That the fruity component of the champagne, which might be a part of the reduction process in creating the marque de champagne, right? Really, really does come through in a way that I haven't seen in many other champagne truffles. So,
well, thank you.
It's a great start to the morning. Now, did you ever meet Christopher Norman? John Downs, Christopher Norman. Do you ever meet John?
No, I don't think so.
He had a piece many years ago where he used actually fresh Prosecco. So we opened up a bottle of Prosecco and whipped it into a goat cheese ganache.
Mm.
And if you had an opportunity, and then he dusted it with toasted herbs. I forget which one. I'd have to go look. Roasted. But you could, if you had this incredibly fresh, still feel the Prosecco sparkling on your tongue, right? Yeah, but you have to have it, the same day the pieces were made. But, since that piece, this is the first piece I've had with a sparkling wine, even if it's a reduction, which really reminds me of the sparkling wine, right? Which I think is fun. And if this were done from the Swiss company whose name begins with the letter T, that has a boutique in Rockefeller Center, and everybody who's a New Yorker will know exactly who I'm talking about when I say that. The crystallized sugar on the outside would completely destroy.
Yes.
This. I mean, there'd be the bright hit sweetness of the sugar on the tongue immediately melting, and sweetness being the first thing you've got. And then the crunch of the sugar as you're biting through it. And the fact that this is just a very, very simple enrobed piece, I'm sorry, hand dipped piece, means that there's none of this distraction, which I think is a really, really solid, really solid. Where should I go next? You are the owner of this collection.
Well,
what it is. Let's jump over, however, to one of the permanent collection pieces.
Do you like lemon? Are you a lemon fan?
I do love lemon.
Okay.
So tell me about this. Is there any special lemon, and how is this done?
I use Meyer lemons, and I actually create a rice milk with the peel of the lemon, the organic lemons that we get, and it sits and becomes a really strong flavor profile. for a few days before we ever put it into the mix. And then what we do at the end of each batch, we add our fresh squeezed Meyer lemons into each batch. So you're getting really like a really fresh citrus experience. And then, of course, everything's dipped in our dark chocolate, our pure chocolate at the end. So I really love the fact that lemon and chocolate, a lot of people don't think really go together because they've never had a quality mix.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to create something that is unexpected, whereas people think of orange and lemon together naturally, but they don't think of lemon. So my goal is always to create something a little bit left of center, a little something that's going to tweak your taste buds and just give you that experience of balance at the same time. So now that's my lead in for you, Clay.
So I just want to make sure I understand here, which is that you're doing an extraction of the lemon in rice milk.
Yes.
Oh, I just want to make sure over the course of several days.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are these the peels of the Meyer lemon?
Yes.
Okay, so there's going to be a higher level of so the Meyer lemon is going to be sweeter than a normal lemon is, just to begin with, so people aren't familiar with it. But you are pulling, from the peel and from the pith underneath, so there's going to be that, right? And over the course of several days, it's going to give you a base flavor profile, which might not actually have the bright acidic profile that a lemon is going to have. And so the addition of actual lemon juice towards the end, right, is going to add that. So you have lemon in two different ways in the same piece, right? Am I understanding what's going on?
Absolutely. You got it.
Okay. Again, I put this on my nose, and what I'm getting is that chocolate blend, right? And the more I smell of it, the more sort of a roast forward profile comes from it, which I have to assume is deliberate because you spent a lot of time thinking about it.
I did.
Wow. I mean, I love lemon and chocolate, including aiguillette, which is the candied lemon peel and chocolate. And so there's a slight sense in which the firmness of this ganache, so it's not a wet ganache. Slab ganaches have a tendency to be firm. You need them to be because they provide structure for everything, right? It has a texture which sort of reminds me of an aiguillette, right? It has that bite through that says there's something there, which is really, really quite interesting. I mean, if you just smell the ganache with the chocolate, I mean, that combination is lovely. It's a really lovely lemon flavor profile in this. I mean, it is really quite pronounced. You're not going to mistake it for any other citrus. And I've spent a lot of time eating confections, you might imagine. And so if this were to be a lemon flavor or a lemon compound or something like that, a lemon oil, it would be something that would be obvious to detect. And I think this is where doing the extraction in the rice milk and then adding the lemon juice later on, right, adds to the complexity of the lemon flavor. And again, as with the champagne, boom, boom, there's this little beat back and forth between the lemon flavor and the chocolate and the lemon flavor and the chocolate, which again is an aspect I like a lot. Not everybody does, but it's something that I find here is quite lovely. Yum. Interesting. I don't want, if I can, I have a story about this.
Sure.
So many, many years ago, I was working at something called the World Pastry Forum. And I had a chance one day to take a class with Albert Adria. So Albert is the younger brother chef of Chef Ferran Adria, who people may know from El Bulli, at the time the most famous restaurant in the world. And I realized during that class that not everybody has confidence in their sense of taste. So they're good at following recipes. Technically, they're good. But if you ask them to create something, you might have to give it to somebody else to figure it out. And so I had an opportunity when I was with Kees Rad at the Metropolitan in Amsterdam. to do a class at a chocolate festival where what we said, when a chocolatier or pastry chef says lemon, what do they mean when they say lemon? And so we went into the equivalent of Restaurant Depot in Amsterdam, and we got lemon in as many different forms as we could possibly find. And then we did it as a lemon ganache and a lemon sorbet and a lemon ice cream and a lemon gelato, and we used compound. And it's like, it's really, really quite interesting, right, to think about when we think of the word lemon, what do we mean by lemon? Because there are so many different expressions of lemon. And this is a lovely one. I just want to let you know, it's a lovely expression of lemon.
Thank you.
I really do like it. And, the fact that it's a Meyer lemon, right, I appreciate technically, but it's not a part of the story, which is really lovely. This is from Mark, and maybe Mark and Yuri, Blue Spruce Chocolates from Kittredge, Colorado. Mark is a regular watcher, listener, and commenter. So good morning, Chef. We truly appreciate the information in your process. Another amazing Pod Save Chocolate episode. Thank you very much. So informative. So you've got a big fan. Hey, Mark, I just want to let you know that I have judged one of your entries into the craft chocolate competition, challenge competition last night. So I'm working on things. This is one that I'm doing this week and next week. Andrea, I am judging a chocolate competition. So lots of chocolate.
Lucky you.
Lucky me. It's the sacrifice I'm willing to make for my art. Where should we go next? From the champagne to the lemon. Where should we go next?
Well, how about a little grounding, energizing espresso?
Energizing espresso. Okay, so I've had my morning coffee, right? Okay. I do use an espresso roast coffee and an AeroPress in case anybody cares about my coffee routine in the morning. Again, it's the more I smell these things, the more, the deliberate, idiosyncratic is the word that comes to mind, but the deliberate choice of the chocolate blend that you've made comes to mind, comes to word. Is there anything special about the particular brand of espresso you're using?
Well, it's from Italy, and it's made into a powder. We have it made especially for the consistency that we like to use to make our chocolate. I think that we have varied the amount of espresso that goes into each batch different times, but I like this combination because I think it has a little kick to it without making you kind of jump off the wall.
Understand. So are you doing similar kind of thing? You're throwing the espresso powder into the liquid component and you're doing that extraction?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. All right. So what I'd say, number one, is the ganache here is softer than the other two. Right. And I don't know if that's deliberate or it's just the batch that you're in, but the ganache is softer. Number two is it's also much more delicate than the other two. The espresso doesn't come out at you right on the front, right? Mm-hmm. What it does, it lingers on the finish of this. It really starts to become apparent as the fat in the chocolate melts and clears out of your mouth. Mm-hmm. And then, the espresso-ness of it is free, right, of the bonds, right, in order to be able to into your nose. And so, I would say this is much more what I think of as typically French mm-hmm. in its style, right? In the sense that, I know that it is coffee when I get done. I know that it's espresso when I get done. But it doesn't beat me over the head with right. I'm coffee. I'm sort of reminded, one thing that I think is a mistake that many people do is when they do chocolate covered coffee beans, mm-hmm. they go straight to espresso. For some reason, it has to be a chocolate covered espresso bean. And I'm not entirely sure why. I mean, I did a lot of development work for a client many years ago, and we ended up using a pea berry, which is a half coffee bean. And we ended up using a light morning roast with the chocolate that we chose because actually it delivered a better expression of the chocolate flavor or the coffee flavor that we were looking for, rather than this sort of burnt espresso, burnt bean flavor, which is an espresso sometimes have. So, what I would say is This one is a much more delicate, different style,
Mhm.
right? Again, more French style than what I think of the other two as being either Nouvelle American,
Mhm.
which is the combination of the American or French style, right? Or Nouvelle French, which
Mhm.
is another term that I've heard for that. Again, extremely well made. If you're looking for something, if you're out there and you're looking for something that's just going to hit you over the head and saying, I am coffee, right? This is not it. But I can see where, and I would be careful in terms of pairings. So if I were to have a pile of these, delicately arranged pile of these on like a cheese board or something like that for an after dinner platter, I would be thinking very, very carefully about what else was on that platter,
Mhm.
right? I wouldn't want flavors that overwhelm
Mhm.
because the coffee in this would, right, get lost. And I think that
Mhm.
would be a real shame. Um, but this is also something that I think, I'm sitting down in the afternoon and I want something that I'm going to pay attention. You have to pay attention to this one in ways you don't have to pay attention to the first two that we tried. And so there is that, that sort of focus kind of thing. Maybe it comes out of your yoga background. I mean, and then I understand that Chef Walter Meyer, whom you took from, also has a background in yoga.
Could be. Absolutely.
Right. Maybe I'm reading a little bit too much into that. So, blackberry, raspberry, or strawberry?
Your choice.
Oh, all right. Well, then I'm going to go with blackberry.
Mhm.
Uh, I spent a lot of time as a child and as an adult in Oregon. And so the Marionberry, right,
Yes.
which is, and a Loganberry, which are
Mhm.
related to blackberries, are among my favorites. And so I'm going to go there. Again, chocolate is on the nose. Right. This is more raspberry forward. You open it up and the raspberry is there immediately. It's obvious that it's a natural raspberry and not some sort of raspberry flavor. Um, and I want you to know that I am doing my best just not to consume every single one of these in full today, because I have an afternoon where I've got like a dozen chocolate bars to judge, and I need to be careful that I don't overwhelm my palate. So this is different again. I mean, the flavor is much more present than the espresso is, but it's not as forward as the lemon is. And
Mm.
whereas the lemon beats back and forth, right, and the champagne beats back and forth, what happens is that the raspberry is there, and it's there, and then it just sort of gently fades away,
Mhm.
right? And even after the chocolate leaves the mouth, the, the raspberry is there. I mean, yeah, no, I was on a forum and somebody said, where can I find dark chocolate raspberries? And had I known about these, I would have said, you want to go consider this. I may go try to find the forum post and say, think about these. I mean, you know, there's a tendency, and you tell me about this is that when you pick a style, you try to do everything in that style. So if
Mhm.
you have an approach to flavor, everything is that approach to flavor. I mean, I'm detecting these differences. Does that surprise you? I mean, or is this the way you think about, the development of these pieces as you're making them?
It doesn't surprise me. I think there's so much that goes on to the individual process at that moment when you're making something, when you cut it, when you let it, air dry. So some things can be a little longer, a little, shorter. We try to make everything consistent, but I think sometimes it's nice to have those little variances and nuances that are like a little added surprise to your mouth when you're actually experiencing it. So
Mhm.
it's kind of like, even though no two lemons will be exactly the same, they should be similar in feel and taste. So,
Mhm. So,
and
and
that
you're
gives
going
it
to the market, and you're going
complexity.
to the market. Yeah, you're going to the market and buying fresh raspberries.
Oh, yes. Oh,
And
yes.
so, yes, from punnet to punnet, from week to week, over the course of the season, the raspberries are going to be very, 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 very different. Um, so I understand that, right? But the fact that there is a difference in flavor, right? What am I? And what I'm detecting in the espresso me, or is it the way you think about it?
No, I think the way you've expressed it is very accurate. Some people, their mouthfeel and taste might feel that it's very robust.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has a slightly different taste bud development. And, we try to really create something we feel is a balance for everyone.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I have this discussion a lot about quality. People talk about quality, and I think a lot of people focus on taste as a primary measure of quality. And there is no objective measure of quality. What you like is what you like. What I like is what I like, right? And the fact, that just because I like it doesn't make it good or the best. It just means we differ. And so it's sometimes, and the food culture that you grew up in is different from the food culture that I grow up in. And so, it may be that I may not be familiar with a flavor. And so there are all these differences going on, but there's also intent.
Mhm.
I as a maker, you as a maker intend for things to come out a certain kind of way,
Mhm.
right? And other people, and this is the nature of art. I mean, I'm a photographer by training. I went to RISD, you went to Parsons. I have a lot of friends in architecture and interior design, corporate side mainly, not residential. But I put one of my pieces up on the wall, and like it's out of my control, right? What people think about it is what they think about it, no matter what I intended when I was doing it. And so that's just part of the creative thrill, I
Mhm.
suppose, is wondering how people are going to accept what you've done, whether it's a photograph or it's an interior or it's a piece of chocolate. Let's go to the spicy ginger, because
Okay.
before I got into chocolate, um, I was into hot sauces, right?
You're going to
So
like this one.
cool. Yeah, and I love ginger just generally. And we haven't gone through all the pieces. We got through a little over half of them. This may be the last one we do. Again, the ganache is a different texture here. It's much firmer, more like the yeah. Um, Yeah, so there's a complex evolution of the ginger flavor in this, as there is, with the lemon, and in this case, it's more like the raspberry, in the sense that the ginger flavor comes at you at the very beginning, and then it fades slowly. It's not beating back and forth with the chocolate for dominance, right? And it presents itself as ginger in one way at the beginning. It comes through, and there's a little bit of the heat of the ginger that comes through sort of in the middle. And at the end, the ginger is there in my mouth. It's not as present, for example, as the raspberry is, because the raspberry is going to be bright and up in your nose. There are going to be more
Mhm.
aromatics, which are getting at retronasally, right? But still, there is that, the complexity of the ginger. There's often a fruitiness, an aromatic fruitiness of fresh ginger that's up in your nose. And, you know, as I breathe in, that's what I'm getting on the long finish. Um, and so just a real quick question that occurred to me: how much of that clarity in the flavor do you think is because of the fact that you're not using dairy, right? Which has,
Mm.
you understand what I'm
I
asking
do.
there?
I do. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I use very, very, very fresh organic ingredients. We source our ginger from Peru, and it's all organic. So I think that has a lot to do with. But I also agree, by not having any dairy, we're taking out any possibility of not getting that flavor through. We use
Mhm,
a minimal amount of rice milk, which is what we use as our connector, if you will, our ingredient.
mhm,
And I think
mhm,
that really enables the other ingredients to come alive.
mhm. No, it makes sense. And one of the reasons why I asked is, I was walking down the street yesterday and I saw a little sign here in Prescott, and it said "Best Hot Chocolate in Arizona." Right. And so that was an attestation. I had to, I'm stopping what it is that I'm doing, and I'm going in and having hot chocolate. And they were taking chocolate buttons. I don't know which ones they were, in an espresso machine. They were put them in the bottom of a cup, poured a lot of milk in it, and then used the steam wand to melt everything together. But the number one flavor component I was getting was dairy. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they were using dark chocolate buttons, but there was so much milk, and I don't know I don't think it was cream. It was of whole milk, that the ratio of chocolate to milk was, this is just entirely a dairy experience, not a chocolate experience. And so for people who are looking at doing these kinds of things, it makes sense to experiment with water, as a medium, because water ganaches are a thing. If you think about a non-dairy milk, then the texture of the milk and the flavor of the milk. So using rice milk, for example, as opposed to oat milk. I mean, oat milk is usually just so recognizable,
Mm-hmm.
right? That you don't necessarily want to go and well, no, it's harder to work with a broader range of flavors. Let's put it that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't work with a lemon. Oat milk would not work with lemon, for example. It might work with coffee, but I'm having trouble imagining also that it working with any of the fruit flavors here. Um, so let's do it. So boom, the hour has like flown by. I want to remind everybody, I'm here. You're watching Pod Save Chocolate. We're here with Chef Andrea Young of Sweet Vegan Chocolates in New York City. If you are watching on YouTube, give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Go over to thechocolatelife.com, because this episode of the Chocolate Life, or Pod Save Chocolate, is sponsored by members of the Chocolate Life. And Chef, I mean, one of the things, so number one is that people can go to your website and they can order it. Right. But one of the things that we can all do to help support small businesses is you offer a subscription box service, right?
Yes, we
So
do.
it's a seasonal subscription box service.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't, as we head out, talk to us about how many of them are there, the approach to each one. So how does the winter season, differ from the spring and summer season, and what people are going to get when they subscribe to the boxes. And I think, just for everybody to know, one of the most important things you're going to get is supporting a small business, which is really, really
Absolutely.
important. Okay, so please.
But also, I think you're going to get the benefits of amazing flavors that are unique to each season. We love to celebrate the uniqueness of the winter season with our peppermint persuasion, as well as our midnight passion is in that box. Our blueberry bliss is in there as well.
So what
So,
is the Midnight Passion? What is Midnight Passion as a flavor combination?
sure, midnight passion is our deep, dark, purest chocolate.
Okay.
So we love that for winter time.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're into the summer box, for example, it would have our luscious lemon, our orange blossom, our tropical, which is a combination of 4 different fruits that we love to bring together, as well as our coconut crazy. So I think what it is we love to just have fun with our flavors and,
Mm-hmm.
have everyone have a nice experience. It's not something you're going to get every month, so you don't have to worry about, overindulging. And also our chocolates are only 50 calories each.
Overindulging. Is it possible? Overindulging?
So we love to make people happy with chocolate. So when you select our chocolate, you're going to get an extra special treat with us. And we're going to also make sure you enjoy every experience you have with us. So we love to have everyone join in, experience our flavors, and support a small women-owned business that's making a difference every single day, working with children and making the awareness of how great plant-based chocolate can actually taste.
I think that's a great way to end today's episode. And and I'm glad you said it, not me. Right? We didn't plan this outro or anything like that. It's just, Chef. It's been, number one, a pleasure to get to know you, and to learn a little bit about your story. To have an opportunity to taste your work. I had no idea what to expect. As I said, one of the people who works for you reached out to me, right, about 3 weeks ago, and we're doing this, fairly quickly. This stuff arrived yesterday. I had no idea what to expect. As somebody who'd been in New York City for almost 4 decades, and had not been aware of the work that you're doing. Had I known, I would have made the trek from Brighton Beach up to Harlem, probably on a fairly regular basis. I mean, because it's a different style of chocolate making, and this is the thing that I think that is really, really important that people to think is that when you're looking at truffles or bonbons, right? And bonbon is just a French term that means good, right? Or what the Belgians would call pralines, not praline or pralines, because we need to be careful about those as well, is that there are a bunch of different styles of these things. And if you get always focused on the brightly colored shell molded pieces as your preferred thing because they look pretty and we're doing this, or very, very heavily surface decorated, slabbed and rubbed pieces, which you might find at Mary Bell, for example. If we focus on a particular style, then I think that we're unnecessarily, perhaps unwittingly, um, um, not exploring all the contours that the world of chocolate enables us. And so going out there and trying things. So walking into some place and saying, I like raspberry, do you have raspberry? Or, I like, champagne, do you have champagne? And then doing that. And then engaging with the person behind the counter so that, what you can do is you can develop this relationship is really, really fun and really, really important. And, if that is the lesson that you all learn from today, I think that's a great lesson for everybody to learn. And it's been a pleasure for me to have to do that. Chef, I look forward to getting together again in the future, perhaps tasting another collection. I don't know if you know this, but are you aware there's going to be an edition of the Salon du Chocolat in New York in November?
No, I wasn't
So
aware.
maybe you want to reach out, to the organizers and see about that. And there's also a sense in which, if you're going to do really, really, really good confections like this, you got to use dairy. And, the answer to the question is no, you don't. You don't have to use dairy. And with
Thank
that, I
you.
want to say thank you very much, Chef. To everybody who's been watching, thank you very much. And I want to remind you, as we did in the middle of this, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you are doing it wrong. Until the next time, everybody, ciao.